Uh, Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and it is a genuine pleasure to be here. I'm Terrence Blackman, and so let me just make a small correction on the intro. I spent the year 2000, so I have lots of bios which kind of pop around the internet. So I I I am associate professor and chair of the Department of Mathematics at Medgar College. And I spent 2 years at the University of Denver as a member of the Department of Education Research Policy and Practice. And I'm a number theorist by training and a mathematician. But this presentation sort of emerges from the fact from two. So let me also start by acknowledging Dr. Datta and Dean Roll and my new dean of business, Dean Zalima Blair, here, and certainly to also acknowledge Dean Dunn, who just spoke, and the other colleagues here in the audience. It's a genuine pleasure for me to be here. And I wanted to say that this presentation started from two places, and I've heard the words already relative to this presentation: brain circulation, brain drain, entrepreneurship, networks, etc. And so I'm going to, as a mathematician, my slides are perhaps not as fancy, so I hope you will live with that. But I think you'll enjoy. I'll tell you a story. So there are two things that are of importance here. One, I was born in Guyana. And so even though I've lived for most of my life in the United States, I was born in Guyana, and I have some very strong attachment to, obviously the country of your birth, the country of your grandmother, your country of your grandfather, as many of us in this room do. And Guyana there was recently huge discovery of oil in Guyana. And so Guyana has gone overnight from being a very poor country to being a very, very wealthy country. And this is the story that I want to tell you. And the third element of this story that I want to say is a visit. So, as you noted, I'm a mathematician. One of my first advisors, my thesis advisor, was an Indian national named Ravi Kulkarni. And as part of my study, I went to a place called the Harsh Chandra Research Institute in India, which sits on the banks of the Ganges River. And one of the things I discovered, this was in 2000, and everyone today looks at India as a kind of great technological power. And in 2000, I saw the way in which India became great. I mean, at these institutes, there were large numbers of Indian nationals, the Indian diaspora at the center, training individuals. And I've always thought of this as a model for Guyana. And now that Guyana has become relatively wealthy, I think they have enough money to implement it. So here goes. Guyana stands at the precipice of an unprecedented economic boom, fueled by recent oil discoveries. Once considered a relatively quiet economy, it has rapidly transformed into the world's fastest growing economy over the last 2 years. In 2022, Guyana's GDP surged an astonishing 63%, followed by a further 38% growth in 2023. This meteoric rise is a testament to the nation's newfound oil wealth, but it also raises a critical question. How do we turn this short-term boom into lasting prosperity that benefits all of Guyanese? And so the argument that I am making is an Indian argument, and someone alluded to it earlier. The answer lies not only in barrels of oil, but in our people, the diaspora, the brain drain question that one of our earlier speakers will. But in our people and our capacity for innovation being rolled, and the power of the diaspora networks to bridge Guyana's present with a sustainable future. Let me just move this. So I got it. So that's the first one I've already. Yeah. So the oil windfall has unquestionably reshaped Guyana's economic landscape. Since the discovery of the massive offshore Liza 1 well in 2015, and the start of oil production in 2019, national output has skyrocketed. Major international partners have tapped into the Stabroek Block, that's what it's called, elevating Guyana's profile in the world. Projections suggest that by 2028, Guyana's GDP could grow another 115%. To understand what's happening in a relatively small country, outpacing every other country in the world. And so the challenge for me, yet amid the celebration of double-digit GDP growth, there is a sober recognition that economic growth does not automatically equal widespread prosperity. President Mohammed Irfan Ali has warned of the need to avoid the pitfalls of the so-called Dutch disease, the pattern where a commodity boom stifles other sectors and fails to improve everyday life. Indeed, despite swelling national revenues, many ordinary Guyanese still face high costs of living, limited job opportunities, and the inequality in the distribution of wealth. And this paradox is evident in the nation's continued reliance on remittances from citizens abroad, even as oil dollars flow onshore. So in short, the oil boom's benefits must be deliberately steered towards the question that was just inclusive development, or else the moment may pass without fundamentally improving the lives of the Guyanese people. And so this is what I call the diaspora dividend. And it's the point that my colleague here was reflecting in her presentation. And so I actually felt pretty good when I came in and saw your talk. So I figured I wouldn't be terribly off. So if Guyana's oil is powering its economy, then Guyana's diaspora has long been the lifeline sustaining its people. The contributions of overseas Guyanese in finances, skills, and support. And I think one can talk about this for overseas Chinese, overseas Irish, overseas Ghanaians, overseas Nigerians, etc., are both extraordinary and indispensable. In 2019, remittances from the diaspora amounted to US 380 million. By 2023, this had swelled to 550 million. So in spite of the surge in oil, the remittances from the diaspora have actually increased, right? The remittances in 2023 were roughly on par with Guyana's entire education budget and exceeded many other sources of foreign exchange. These funds have been critical lifeline for families, easing poverty, funding education, supporting small businesses, and generally keeping the economy afloat at the grassroots level. One op-ed starkly observed the rising tide of remittances in the oil era reflects not prosperity, but desperation, highlighting how many Guyanese households still lean on overseas relatives to make ends meet. President Ali has acknowledged this reality, expressing profound gratitude for the diaspora's role in breaking the barriers of extreme poverty. He noted that without the steady flow of funds and goodwill from abroad, countless Guyanese would have struggled to overcome economic hardships. So in essence, the diaspora has been a silent partner in Guyana's development long before the first barrel was ever lifted. And so the point I've been trying to make is that any vision of lasting prosperity, therefore, must treat the diaspora not as bystanders, but as central stakeholders in the nation's future. And I think this is one of the things that was really done well by India. I mean, if you go to Bangalore, this is something that was done well by China. This is something that's done well by India. This is something that's increasingly being done well by Jamaica, by the Dominican Republic. And part of the message is that perhaps to the presentation of my colleague, this is something that we developing countries ought to pursue with some vigor and some structure. Beyond sending money, the Guyanese diaspora represents an untapped reservoir of human capital and innovation. It is estimated that nearly 40% of all Guyanese citizens live outside the country, including the outsized proportion of its skilled talent. In fact, according to the Migration Policy Institute, roughly 90% of Guyanese with, again, to amplify the comments of my colleague earlier, 90% of Guyanese with tertiary university education and about 40% of those with secondary education emigrated from Guyana between 1965 and 2000. This staggering statistic is often cited as evidence of brain drain, the loss of skilled workers to foreign shores. However, it illuminates a tremendous opportunity. These expatriate professionals form, as Dean Roll rightly notes, a global network of expertise and experience in fields ranging from engineering and healthcare to finance, education, and technology. There are professors and scientists, entrepreneurs and executives, artists and public servants, all carrying a piece of Guyana with them. As one commentator put it, this diaspora is a wellspring of talent and resources, a living extension of the nation whose potential contributions far exceed the value of the remittances they send. The challenge and the promise for Guyana is to harvest this diaspora dividend in a structured, and I would argue the challenge for many developing countries is to harvest what I'm calling the diaspora dividend in a structured, strategic way, converting brain drain to brain gain, or even brain circulation. In other words, by engaging our overseas compatriots to contribute their skills, whether by returning home or collaborating from afar, we can leverage knowledge transfer, investment, and networks to accelerate development at home. And again, I reiterate, countries like China, India, Ireland have all shown how diaspora engagement can spur technology transfer, industry growth, and even national branding. Lessons that Guyana and developing countries can adapt in their own unique context. How am I doing with time?
3.5. I want to put that shortly.
3.5 minutes. Okay, so I suppose I wanted to say just two more things. I wrote much more than I envisaged, so I'll skip some of the. Maybe I'll send the paper to you. I wanted to say just a few. I wanted to give one example of, and then I'll close. So in terms of the impact of the diaspora, nowhere is the impact of the diaspora felt more than in the realms of technology and education. And I wanted to speak to a shining example of a Guyanese named Dr. Jason Mars. Many of us talked about AI, and Jason Mars has been at the forefront of AI for a long time. He is the founder of something called Clink. It's one of the leading AI companies that created one of the world's most sophisticated conversational AI platforms. And in 2018, he's at the University of Michigan. In 2018, he launched a graduate program enabling top computer science graduates from the University of Guyana to pursue PhDs at the University of Michigan, and this is already bearing fruit. And it's kind of very similar to the Indian experience. And I also wanted to mention another kind of diaspora education transformation. This is called STEM Guyana, and it's run by a woman named Karen Abrams, a Guyanese American tech advocate. She left a successful career in the U.S. and went home to Guyana with a mission to bridge the digital divide, and she founded something called STEM Guyana. And at this point, STEM Guyana has touched close to 20,000 kids in all 10 regions of the country. You might have seen some of this. They were the group that put the Guyanese robotics team in the world global robotics. And so there are these very structured ways in which I think diasporas can play a really key role in what's going on. And so I went backwards. I'll just come to the last slide and maybe I'll close there. 2 minutes. Yes. Yeah. So I'll just come to the last slide and say, you know, unfortunately, I wrote perhaps too much. In concluding this keynote vision, it's important that we remember that the true measure of prosperity is not the height of our GDP graph, but the breadth of opportunities available to all of our citizens. So for Guyanese, we stand today on the cusp of history. The petroleum boom has given Guyana a once-in-a-lifetime financial windfall and the attention of the world. But it is our people, both at home and abroad, who will determine whether the windfall becomes a foundation for lasting prosperity or a footnote in economic reports. By empowering our youth with education and technology, by welcoming our diaspora, welcoming the knowledge of our diaspora, by fostering an environment where innovation and entrepreneurship can thrive, we're planting the seeds of a Guyana that can compete globally while uplifting locally. This is the essence of turning a boom into a sustainable bloom of development. So that's where I wanted to end, and I thought I'd just get there. But I think you get the point I'm trying to make, that, you know, you can have billions of barrels of oil, but really, in some sense, your people are more important, and educated people with access to technology, doing innovative things, is really what will sustain you in the long term. And that's the point I wanted to make to this group, but also in some way to my colleagues in Guyana at home. So I want to thank you very much for listening.